Morning and welcome. Hopefully you can see me. I got my wonderful loud tie on today. This session is titled Power BI Licensing Made Simple. Now, I hope like you have memories of waking up on either Christmas or possibly your birthday and you unwrap this wonderful new toy. Your imagination runs riot. What new things can you do with that new toy? What possibilities are you capable? What can you do? And there's so much excitement and joy. For me, I personally remember Scalextrics being one of the things that I loved playing with and still love playing with, I have to say. I'm not entirely sure why I love Scalextrics. Just watching a car go around the track may sound rather boring to some people. And if I had the opportunity, I would certainly have a Scalextrics track in our house, but we don't have enough space, which is really disappointing. However, I'm going to show my age here. In the 70s, there was a toy release called Evel Knievel's Stunt Bike. And I have to say, if you'd seen the television advert for this particular toy, you would have thought it was absolutely amazing. What this toy could do was quite incredible. And I have to say, both myself and my brother were completely captivated by it. And it was an absolute joy when my brother received one for a birthday present. So the first thing we did is we thought, right, let's see if we can do what you do in the television adverts. And it was a complete failure. All the things in television adverts were so difficult to try and reproduce, but yet we were still able to use our imagination to play with this toy and do more exciting things. Now, many years ago, I was working with a consultancy in Paisley. I was a BI developer, and a lot of my time was spent working in SQL Server reporting services, SSRS. And at that time, I was getting increasingly frustrated with what I saw the competition was doing. There was other reporting tools out there that were doing all sorts of really exciting things. And yet I was working with SSRS and I began to moan and complain and saying to Microsoft, what are you doing? Because this is just not competing with these other tools toe to toe. And a lot of people also felt the same way. I was on the internet and various forums. And I remember going down to SQL Bits, one of the conferences many years ago, and I cornered someone in the Microsoft stand. And I said to him, I'm not happy. What are they doing? What's Microsoft doing? And the gentleman's reply was, just wait. I can't say any more, just wait. I was like, ah. And then not long afterwards, as part of Excel 2010, you could download an add-in, which had various names like Power View, Power Map, and Power this and Power that. And from the moment I started using this particular add-in, which was free for Excel 2010, I was completely hooked. This was released as part of Project Crescent, which at the point I'd asked the Microsoft representative about was actually under wraps. He couldn't talk about it. But what you could suddenly do with data just blew my mind. If you forgive me, I was just so excited. My imagination was fired. Suddenly you weren't constrained by SSRS and what you could do. All this interactivity suddenly came to life. And I watched Project Crescent go from Project Crescent, and now it's actually evolved into what we now know as Power BI, the entire ecosystem of Power BI. And I have to say, my enthusiasm has not waned in many respects. It's not reduced. I often will go to my colleagues. I remember many years ago, I'd drag people over to my desktop and say, look what I can do with Power BI. This is just amazing. And at the time, I had a Power BI Pro license. And many years ago, if you had a Power BI Pro license, you were able to share reports with other users. And then 2 or 3 years ago, Microsoft pulled the rug out from under those users and said, you can no longer share reports unless the other person has a Power BI license as well. So at that point, I realized I'm going to have to study Power BI licensing in detail. I'm going to have to go and start looking at it and do some deep dives. I'm going to have to look in more detail to understand what they mean. So I started reading blog posts and I started reading Microsoft pages. And I read the pages and then I read the pages again. And I'll be perfectly honest, there are several times when I wanted to tear my hair out. They are neither clear to my mind or transparent or easy to find. I had to trawl many different places to pull all the information together in order to understand what Microsoft were offering in terms of their licensing model for Power BI. And then finally, many years, like a few years later, I finally felt I actually understood the Power BI licensing model such that I could actually share it with other people. It was a wonderful revelation. I finally felt I understood it. And not long after that, it was a bit disappointing to realize that Microsoft had not addressed SMEs or their requirements, either budgetary or their needs. And I was like, what? SMEs? I mean, I worked for either SMEs or as a consultant, my clients were SMEs. And I was really, really disappointed. So before I go along, let me make sure we're all on the same page. We all know what I mean by an SME. So let me define it. An SME is a small to medium enterprise. Typically, the headcount is less than 250 people. So they employ less than 250 people, and the turnover is less than 250 million. Okay. That is the vast majority of businesses in business today. That was 99.3% of the businesses in the private sector in 2014. 99.3% of the businesses in the private sector are SMEs. But these were not, the needs of this particular sector of the market was not being addressed by Microsoft. And I have said, it did get me down. I was like, well, why? What are they doing? And that then turned into, I'm going to get grumpy. And I was rather unhappy about this whole thing. I started tweeting about it. I started moaning. And there's one particular tweet I sent out saying, hang on a second, see the competition against Microsoft Power BI. Do you know the competition I actually think is better pricing for compared to Power BI? And someone actually said to me, no, have you done your pricing? Have you double checked your pricing? That conversation says no. And I went and double checked and actually found it was actually the other way around. Microsoft Power BI was actually better for SMEs in terms of pricing. But as part of the same conversation, someone said something to me I didn't expect. And a couple of people said, and I went, sorry, what? Eh? Because they said, you know that the Microsoft licensing that you're told by Microsoft to go and look at and understand, that's not the only way. There are other options because you need to think outside the box. You need to think differently. And I was like, I'm sorry, there's another way. There's a different way of doing things for SMEs, for my clients. Wow. And that was one of the inspirations for this particular webinar that I'm running today. Now, Jane has obviously introduced me. My name is Robert French. I'm a consultant with iAcademy here in sunny Scotland. Rather than having sunshine today, we've got liquid sunshine. It's fantastic. That's how we get the green grass and the lovely heather. I love talking about data. These are my contact details. I'll put them up at the end. If you want to get in touch with me, ask me some questions about Power BI licensing, Power BI or data. I've been working at SAFE for more than 10 years. This profile picture on a Friday, because I work from home, I normally am jeans and t-shirts. On a Friday, I do dress up Friday. So that's why I got the cravat on. Now, as a speaker, I thrive on feedback. I need people to give me feedback, tell me what was crap, what was good, what did work, what didn't work. So if you can find some time to go and fill out the feedback form, it takes you 2 minutes, that'd be fantastic. I'd really appreciate it. So what are the aims of this presentation today? What's my goal? Well, this presentation for me is very much a broad overview of the Microsoft licensing landscape or for Power BI. It's going to be a very, very high level. Now, I'm probably going to point to a few bits in the landscape that I really want to focus on, talk about specifically. So it's going to be very broad brush. It's not going to go into technical detail, but we're also going to talk about at the end some third-party options that I've recently become aware of I'd like to share with you. So unfortunately, it's going to be rather shallow in the technical details. I hope that doesn't disappoint too many people. I love talking technical. Just ask my colleagues. I bore them silly about some of the technical details, but I don't have time to go into technical details here today. I'm not a Microsoft employee. I work for iAcademy. So you're going to get both the good points and the bad points as I see them from the various options I'm presenting. Because when I see Power BI, some of the features, I am just so excited. I just can't help myself. I want to go and tell people and share it and think, oh, this is wonderful. But on the other side, there's sometimes when I think, oh God, please, no. They haven't said that, have they? They didn't put it that way. So there are sometimes downsides, and I will be honest about them. Now, I love answering questions. If you're using the Zoom application, there is a question and answer panel, and I'm very glad that Jane, my co-host, is keeping an eye on that, because on mine, I can't do more than one thing at one time. But there will be time for questions at the end. So start thinking about questions. I love answering questions. And I'm going to steal the catchphrase from a wonderful speaker called Brent Ozar. He talks about his question and answer sessions as being stump the chump. Okay, I want you to ask me questions I don't know, because I don't know everything about Power BI. I don't know everything about Power BI licensing. I was finding some stuff out on Sunday night I didn't know. So come and ask me questions. I love to answer them. So I say, if you can keep them to the end, that'd be great. Otherwise, Jane will interrupt me if she feels appropriate to ask the questions. This is a real person. This is not a recording, okay? It's not a chat bot. It's a real person. It's great. So what are you going to see in this? What am I going to present in this presentation? Well, there are several parts to it. We're going to talk about free. Everybody loves free. There's some free stuff that Microsoft actually give away. I can't believe it. They give stuff away. Then we're going to talk about Power BI Pro license. We're going to talk about the upsides and good sides and bad sides of this particular license. Then we're going to talk about Power BI Embedded. You may never have heard of this product before, but I want to talk about it so you're aware of this product, because I think it has certain unique advantages for SMEs. And we will talk in probably more detail about it later on. We will talk about the elephant in the room, Power BI Embedded. I'm going to skim over it. Sorry, I don't have time to go into detail of it, but we will talk about it briefly as part of the presentation. And then we're going to talk about something different. Some things that I just didn't think about, and approaches I just went, what? Because I had to think outside the box. I had to think differently. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting approach. Why don't I think of that? So to paraphrase Pink in our song, let's get this presentation started. Okay, so we're going to talk about free. What's the upsides of the free things you get from Microsoft? Well, you get the Power BI desktop tool for free. As in, it costs £0 and 0 pence. Why is it good? Why should you even consider downloading that tool? Well, it allows you to explore a wide number of data sources. You can start off with very simple data sources like text files or comment limited files. You can import data from web pages or Excel spreadsheets. As part of the webinar that I did previously called Power BI versus Excel, the grudge match. As part of the webinar, I built a report by pulling some data in from a web page in front of the client, so in front of the audience that I was doing it, and 2 Excel spreadsheets, and built a Power BI report in front of them. So yes, it is possible. You can also pull in data from much larger data sources. I'm thinking about things like SQL Server, Oracle databases, Mongo, Microsoft Azure databases, large data warehouses. And these data connectors don't cost anything. They're included in the product for free. I'm fairly certain there's over 50 of them. Unfortunately, I forgot to go and double check and count. So please go and double check, make sure my figures are right. But these data connectors cost £0 and 0 pence. You also get an ETL tool. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. You may be familiar with some of the more expensive ones that are out there, just do that job and nothing else, like Informatica, Alteryx, Talent, ClickView Expressor, Tableau Data Prep, SQL Server Integration Services, or SSIS. It just so happens the SSIS team happened to help build the ETL tool that's built in for free to Power BI desktop, so it's pretty damn good, I have to say. You also get a data warehousing engine, a desktop version built into Power BI desktop for free. The SQL Server Analysis Service is the engine that runs that particular data warehousing tool that's used by many enterprises such as Morgan Stanley, Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays. They may have data warehouses built using SQL Server Analysis Services. You get a desktop version built into Power BI for free. Yes. You also get an analytics language as well, DAX. DAX is designed so that anyone who's used Excel formulas feels comfortable with it. It's a very powerful language, and a lot of enterprises are using this to drive their analytics. You can also mash up data. That's a very sexy sort of term that us data geeks are using. What does it mean? It just means that you pull data in from different data sources into one report and create a new insight. For example, a report I'm currently building is pulling in some data from NHS Scotland. It's publicly available data, some data from National Records of Scotland, some census data, and also just some geographical data I found on the internet, pulling it all into one Power BI report to visualize the data a lot better. That's what you can do for free. You can also share the data with your colleagues. Power BI Desktop creates a .pbix file, so you can share that, you can email it to your colleagues. If you've got Power BI Desktop, same version, they can open it. You can put it on network share. There's also a Power BI service. It's an internet-based service that will render reports. You get a login, you can create an account with it, and that's also for free. That allows you to upload reports from your Power BI desktop and publish them to the internet so you can share it with the world if you want. Here's a report that I built as part of the webinar I was speaking about earlier. This is what I did in front of the audience and built it live. Yeah, that was pretty scary. You get all this for nothing, or free, £0 and 0 pence. However, there's a downside. Yes, there are certain downsides. So let's talk about them. I did say you could publish your reports to the internet for free using this particular free product. However, be aware there is zero security. There's no security whatsoever. It's completely public. Okay, so this is maybe not the technique you want to use if you're publishing confidential financial reports for your company. However, there are a number of charities I know that are using this for marketing. They're publishing these reports to market various things, to do some public relations, to tell people what they're doing. So that's an option. It is possible. You also, if you want to use some of the more powerful aspects of Power BI Desktop, you may have to learn some other languages such as DAX or M. As a programmer, it's like, yay, fantastic, wonderful. There's no support for Microsoft. There is some forums they do make available, but there's no paid support because it's a free product. However, there is certainly a whole community out there who are happy to help you with Power BI and your Power BI desktop problems. And they are really good. They've got some real experts out there. If you want to know some more details, well, I just happen to have written a blog post all about this. I love talking about this stuff. I really do. Power BI Pro. So the Power BI Pro license, first question we'll talk about is how much does it cost? Okay, it's relatively inexpensive. It costs £7.50 per month. However, you have to sign up for a 12-month contract. Okay, so it costs you £90 a year as of August 2020, and the price may go up. If you're a non-profit organization, you do get a discount, by the way. If you're an Office 365 license, there is a license for Power BI Pro included as part of that. You lucky person if you have one of those. What are the upsides of Power BI Pro? Well, obviously you can share the reports, as I said before. However, when you upload them to the internet, to the Power BI service, you can decide who you share your reports with and who you don't. You actually get to decide who you're going to share it with, so you can share it much more securely. Now, you also have the ability to consume and create Power BI apps. Power BI apps are essentially single downloadable files, and what they contain is dashboards and reports that are pre-built and contained. So for example, why would you want to use them? You may, for example, want to analyze your Twitter sentiment analysis, okay? Or look at more details on your Facebook adverts. But you don't know how to hook up to the data, you're not quite sure how to analyze all the data, get a Power BI app, get a suitable one in the App Store, just pull it down, install it, it will hook up to your data source, and all these reports are pre-built for you. So someone's done all the hard work, creating the dashboards, creating the reports, analyzing the data. There's other companies like Sage, for example, who do it. There's also a YouTube Analytics report as a Power BI app. Google Analytics report, again, as a Power BI app. But you can also create these. So say, for example, you want to create some predefined dashboards and reports for your sales team. You don't want them to worry about their updating, finding all the dashboards, adding it to the application, yada, yada, yada. So you build it for them, you pre-build it, and you can actually send out this single file that can be uploaded and updated very easily and very simply. Now, please not confuse Power BI apps with Power Apps. They are two totally different things. Yes, that was a facepalm moment when I found out that. I love the Microsoft marketing department No end. Not a hint of sarcasm in my voice at all. The other thing about Office 365 and Power BI is they are integrated so well. Okay, they're integrated really well into each other. So that the security, if you have Office 365 groups, you can use that to manage the security for your reports if you wish. Next, Power BI Data Gateway. Now, there are some, if you upload a report to the Power BI service, any data for the Power BI report must reside on the internet or be accessible from the internet. However, there are certain data sources that have to reside in your infrastructure. There is no arguments, there's no ifs nor buts, maybe security or other reasons. What the Power BI Data Gateway allows you to do is allow the Power BI report that's on the service on the internet to securely connect to your on-premise data sources. It's a whole big complicated discussion, technical details, but yes, it is secure. I have looked at and I have managed to get up and running, so that you require Power BI Pro in order to use this particular application. If you want more technical details, please reach out and we'll chat about it. Downsides of Power BI Pro. Yes, there are certain downsides. First thing you should be aware of, when you upload your Power BI report to the Power BI service, yes, your data is kept in a secure place that nobody else can access other than you. However, the resources that are used to display and render your reports are shared with other people, other clients. They obviously don't see your reports, but if you like, the computer and the memory and other resources are shared with other people. So you may have what they call noisy neighbors. So possibly someone is rendering lots of Power BI reports. It means your reports go slightly slower because you're sharing it with everybody else, those resources. I did say, yes, you could share your reports on the Power BI service with other people. Yes. The catch is that the other person has to have a Power BI Pro license. Okay, there's no arguments about that. Trust me, I know only too well. You want more details? Guess what? I've written a blog post about it. Details are there. The other thing, any URLs I'm sharing today, we will certainly send out a follow-up email to anyone who's attended the webinar. So you get all the URLs I'm going to mention today. So please don't worry about trying to note them all down. I will send them out because they are quite long and lengthy. Right, Power BI Embedded. Now, you may not have heard of this product. There are actually two different types of Power BI Embedded, two different flavors I like to call them. The first one is the Office 365 EM-SKU. Yay, don't you just love these terms? SKU stands for Stock Keeping Unit. Now, there are actually three SKUs. There's EM1, EM2, and EM3. We're going to talk about them in a second. Just want to introduce them, okay? What are the upsides of the Office 365 embedded SKUs? Well, using Office 365 apps, it makes it so simple and so easy to embed Power BI reports into Microsoft Teams or SharePoint online pages. And when I say easy and simple, it took me all of about 30 seconds to embed a Power BI report into Microsoft Teams using an Office 365 app. It is that easy, seriously. They have worked so hard to get these two products to integrate and work well together. You can also share reports within your organization. And by your organization, I mean your Office 365 tenant. That means that even though one person requires to have a Power BI Pro license in order to upload to the service, it means that nobody else has to have a Power BI Pro account to be able to see the reports. If they're part of that Office 365 tenant, they can see the reports, which is pretty good. And they can do that securely. Okay, downsides. Well, you probably think, yeah, fantastic. I can share reports and services, great, fantastic. Share my colleagues. I can share my customers. No, you can't. You cannot share externally. Okay, there is one possible little workaround with Azure B2B where you actually get somebody to add themselves or add, if you know somebody that uses Azure Active Directory or have an Office 365 subscription, you can invite them into your Azure Directory, Active Directory and be able to share reports that way, but we'll not go into that just right now, okay? The other downside, I'm afraid to say, is the pricing model. Yay! I'll let you have a quick look at that while I grab a drink of water. There are three SKUs, as I say. There's EM1, EM2, and EM3. First thing to point out, EM1 and EM2, you cannot buy them. Okay, you have to be an Office 365 volume license customer, and you can only buy them from a Microsoft partner. Fantastic. I couldn't even get prices for this webinar. The price you see there is a guide price from a blog post I found that's 18 months out of date. So it gives you an idea. Okay. The other thing to be aware of, EM1 and EM2 do not have dedicated infrastructure. What does that mean? Noisy neighbors. So therefore, you're sharing the resources that are used to render and display reports with someone else. However, you can buy the EM3 SKU from Office 365. So all you do, you can buy that. It's got its own dedicated infrastructure. Yay, this is good. So what you do is you get your Office 365 administrator to log into the admin portal, and you can buy the EM3 SKU from there. Okay. Be aware they talk about the pricing being on a month-to-month basis. However, you have to sign up for a minimum of 12 months. No arguments, no ifs, no buts, and you cannot change a SKU easily. Okay, so if you buy one, you can't go down or you can't go up unless you speak very nicely to Microsoft. I did see some documentation that said, yes, it might be possible if you speak to Microsoft. Good luck. Not a conversation I would like to have, but hey ho. Now, I did say there was two flavors. So what's the second flavor of Power BI embedded service? It's the Azure Power BI embedded service. This was primarily designed and aimed for independent software vendors. However, any customer who's got an Azure subscription can buy this. The idea was that independent software vendors, people creating web apps and applications, stuff like that, could embed Power BI reports into their application. Shouldn't say that being a developer. However, what's really interesting about this is the pricing model and some other aspects. The pricing model is effectively a pay-as-you-go model. Okay, and the best analogy I could come up with is a parking bay with a parking meter. So if you park your car in that parking bay, you pay money for that car to be there. If your car's not there, you don't pay anything. Pay-as-you-go model, fantastic. The other interesting thing is if you stop or pause the service, it's used kind of slightly interchangeably. If you pause or stop the Azure embedded service, Power BI embedded service, you don't pay anything. Let me repeat that. If you stop or pause the Power BI, Azure Power BI embedded service, you don't pay anything. Now, you'll notice in the blue text, the white background, the green text, that comes directly from the URL at the bottom. I will send this to you. There's no upfront cost. You're not signing up to any contract. There's no termination fee. So if you stop it, you don't pay anything. You only pay for what you use. So for example, say that one of the services costs £4 per hour. They actually bill you by the minute. Okay, I think it might be a slightly lower granularity. I'm not 100% sure. So say, for example, one of the services costs £4 an hour. You use it for 30 minutes. So it's £4 an hour. You only use 30 minutes, use half an hour, therefore you pay £2. I think that's pretty good. That's quite incredible. There's actually 6 SKUs in total, and you can change between them however many times you want. You can go up and down. There's A1 to A6 SKUs, so A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6. However, be aware, the larger the SKU, okay, the higher the number, the more power. So A6 SKU is very powerful, but it's also quite expensive. Okay, and I'll show you the price in a moment. However, you can also, if you decide to scale back down, you've got less power, but you pay less money. Interesting. And the Azure administrator can change the SKU as many times as they want, whenever they want. They can do it automatically if they wish. You can securely share reports with anybody. Okay, so these reports you're creating that are associated with this particular Azure embedded SKU can be shared with anybody. They don't have to be in the organization. They don't have to have Power BI Pro. Now, what are the downsides? Well, I have to say the pricing model, yeah. It doesn't get any better, I'll be honest with you. Things to point out, the A1 and A2 SKU, they don't have dedicated infrastructure, therefore noisy neighbors. And I do give a shout out to a lovely gentleman called Matt Smith, who did say some of the lower SKUs are fairly underpowered. I accept that. However, if, for example, you got a company where you're thinking, I would like to have a wee try at Power BI. I'd like to see how it would work for us, see if it's possible, it's pretty good, maybe, maybe not. Then the lower SKUs are a way of trying, but a wee bit dip your toe in the water. Does it work for me? You don't have to sign up for any commitment. Now, one interesting thing to know, the A4 SKU is equivalent to the premium P1 in terms of power, which I thought was very interesting. I was finding that the other day. Now, the other thing is, oh yeah, you think fantastic, and embed my Power BI reports into Office 365. No, you can't use you can't use the Office 365 apps to embed the reports into Microsoft Teams or SharePoint Online. However, later on, I'll tell you that someone actually has managed to use this SKU to embed reports into SharePoint Online, but you get some details later on about that. Next, you got to buy it from the Azure portal. Yay! Office 365, Office 365 portal, Azure portal. Yeah, okay. You got to remember all this. No, you don't. Don't worry. I've actually documented all this. So, do you want more details? I've written a blog post. Do you get the pattern that's going here? I spend a lot of time talking and writing about this. So Power BI Premium. Yeah, it's the elephant in the room. We've kind of got to talk about it. What are the upsides of Power BI Premium? Well, you can share reports securely with anybody. Yeah, they don't have to have a Power BI Pro license. They don't have to be part of your Office 365 tenant. You can decide who you want to share it with. Okay. With Power BI Premium, you're effectively buying capacity, and you decide which workspaces are going to get so much power. You also get some other fantastic features, and I'll be perfectly honest. There are some great, compelling reasons as to why you want to buy Power BI Premium. You get access to the AI and some other funky features, and it's just amazing. And I have to say, if you have the budget, which I appreciate a lot of SMEs won't have, it's worthwhile investigating. One of the interesting things about purchasing Power BI Premium is you also get a license for Power BI Report Server. You're like, yeah, whatever, Robert, I don't care. This will allow you actually to host on-premise, on your own servers, Power BI reports. Now, I'm going to ask a very strange question. I'm going to make a very strange point. If you have SQL Server Enterprise with software assurance, okay, very few people have a SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance, you have a license for Power BI Report Server. That means you can host on your own infrastructure reports, Power BI reports. Why do I talk about this? We had an engagement with a large public sector organization within Scotland, and we were talking about their Power BI. They had one or two challenges, and I was just going through just various questions to make sure they're getting a good return on their investment for the Power BI licenses. They had purchased a number of these to be able to share reports with a number of the high Hegians, people in the management, yada, yada, yada. And he spent quite a bit of money on it. And I just said to the person I was speaking to, can you tell me, do you have SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance? Expecting the answer to be no. They came back and said yes. So I pointed out to them, you do know that you didn't necessarily have to buy the Power BI licenses, pro licenses, in order to be able to share those Power BI reports. You know that, don't you? No, they didn't. So that's why I'm making the point in this webinar that if you're lucky enough to have that, that makes a big difference, and that can change your strategy. But there's more technical details to that, which we can obviously talk about later. If you want to know more details, please feel free to visit the blog post that I wrote about Power BI Premium. Most of you are going to go like, yeah, I really don't care about all the details, Robert. What I actually want to know is the price, because the price will actually determine whether I'm even going to consider it. And yeah, for me, the price is one of the downsides of Power BI Premium. Yeah, I'll let you have a quick look at that quickly. Because to me, this is where Microsoft are pitching Power BI license at the moment. This is where big enterprises, large enterprises come in. They can afford this sort of money, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that many of the clients I'm working with don't have this sort of money just for reporting. And this is where I think that Microsoft are not addressing this particular thing. And certainly when I had conversations with many other directors and other people when I presented this to the board, the reaction was like, yep, fantastic, that's great, thank you very much, that's a very interesting price. We'll consider that later on, which is executive speak for, yeah, part of that we're not interested, we're not going to look at it. Because up until then, I had always assumed that the way was just Microsoft, 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 or Microsoft. There was only one way of licensing Power BI. And if you look at the competition, if you look at other reporting products, they will highlight effectively what Microsoft are saying publicly. Do what we tell you. Power BI Pro accounts or Premium. But that's not entirely true, because if you think outside the box, and if you want to try and address your budgetary needs of an SME, I think you've got to think slightly differently. And as part of that Twitter conversation I talked about earlier, some people challenged me and said, have you thought about different solutions, different ways of doing things? And one of the gentlemen replied was a lovely gentleman called Matt Allington. And when I was looking at his blogs, he was saying, he actually said the same thing I said. He said, Microsoft either have deliberately or accidentally chosen not to address the needs of SMEs. Why? Who knows? Maybe one day I'll get an answer from Microsoft representatives. If any Microsoft representatives are ever watching this, please let me know. I'd be very interested. And he said actually it's a different solution. There's a different way of doing things using existing Microsoft products, but you have to think differently. And he said, what I do for my SMEs is I use existing Microsoft technologies, but in a different way. I mix them up and I do it differently. He uses a particular tool called Microsoft Flow. Microsoft Flow can do many things. And the idea is what it does is it kicks off a certain process automatically at 7 in the morning. It starts a Microsoft Azure Power BI embedded service associated with a particular workspace. That's where the reports are stored. Okay, so the service is running. So that means that when people come and look at the reports in that workspace, they can see them and is able to embed those reports into a SharePoint online page. Then another automatic process starts at 7 at night, stops or pauses the Power BI Azure embedded service. Okay, now that means that from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock, sorry, from 7 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning, the customer is not paying anything. Now, the downside on that means the reports are not available, but for most SMEs, they work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And all Matt Allington is doing is using existing Microsoft technology to leverage a solution that meets the needs of small to medium enterprises. Now, it's a rather advanced technique. I have to say, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's quite achievable. I could do that. You'd have to be comfortable with Azure and all the technology associated with it. He's not doing anything Microsoft don't know about or anything people shouldn't be doing. He's just using Microsoft technology in a different way. And he does go through it in this particular blog post in detail so you can see exactly how it works and what to do and how to do it. I would say it's actually quite achievable, I have to say. I would recommend going and have a look at it, see if this solution would work for you. Now, there's another company I'm aware of called DevScope. DevScope are a company who are using Microsoft technologies to do different things. For example, I came across them about 4 or 5 years ago when they released something called Power BI Pro Tiles. What it allows you to do is embed snapshots of Power BI reports into PowerPoint presentations. They've been doing this about 4 or 5 years. Do you know what? Earlier this year, Microsoft and a whole lot of fanfare found, yeah, fantastic. We'll now let you embed snapshots of Power BI reports into PowerPoint presentations. And I'm reading it going like, yeah, DevScope been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. You've only just caught up. And they're doing other things like Power BI robots that send out snapshots by email of Power BI reports to customers and all sorts of other lovely jubbly stuff. And he got in contact with me and said, we're launching this new product called Power BI Portal that allows you to share reports with external customers without having to pay premium prices. And I was like, okay. So I went to look at it, and what they do is they create a portal that you can actually create logins for all of your customers, each individual person. You can log into the portal, you can customize it to your own needs, and color schemes and all that bits and bobs. And there's some other interesting features. Now, like me, I'm sure in your office, you don't leave the heating and the lights on 24/7, 365, just in case that Janice comes into the office on a Wednesday morning at 4:30 because she needs to do that report, or pops in, say, on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't leave the lights on. You don't leave the heating on, do you? Well, of course not. But interesting enough, one of the features they've got is that someone's not been using the Power BI portal for a certain amount of time. You can decide, say, for example, 10 minutes. It will actually stop or pause the Azure Power BI embedded service behind that, so you're not paying for it. Because nobody's using it, why have it running? Interesting, I thought. You can also, I say, securely share your reports with anyone. Now, I'm sure anybody looking at the screen going, Robert, how much does it cost? Just tell me, how much does it cost? Well, I have to go through a couple of parts to show you, because there's a couple of things you need to purchase. So I'm going to show you the parts you need to purchase, and I'm going to go through the pricing. Okay, so there's 4 things you need to buy: an Azure SQL database, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, 2 Microsoft App Services, and obviously you need to purchase an Azure Embedded SKU. Okay, Power BI Embedded SKU. You need to buy them. You also then go to Power BI to DevScope, sign up for a 12-month contract. This currently costs €3,499 per annum for 12 months. Depending on the exchange rate, I've guesstimated to, well, I've kind of decided on a figure of £3,200 per annum. Okay, just so I can calculate the prices. Now, I've only done the calculations for the A1 to A4 SKU, just for comparison purposes. Okay, so you can see them there. I've also popped on the cheapest premium SKU, okay? That's the one that's running 24/7, 365, just for comparison purposes. I'll let you quickly digest the prices a second. Now, just to be super clear, the price you see on the screen includes the DevScope Power BI Portal 12-month contract, the Azure SKU running for 10 hours a day, Monday to Friday only. Most SMEs are open Monday to Friday, 10 hours, typically 9 to 5, or 10 hours for this example. Your circumstances might be different, so therefore you need to do a slightly different calculation. The Azure service, Power BI embedded service, is never paused, even though they have that facility that if it's, nobody's using it, it will pause and therefore saving money. Also includes the price for the Azure SQL database, the 2 Azure app services, and the Azure storage service. Okay, so I'm sure there's several people looking at the screen going, yes, I am just a little suspicious about that. How did he arrive at that price? Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm a consultant. I've got to be open, okay? And I want to be open. I want to be open with my customers and say, I have nothing up my sleeves. I'm not hiding anything. This is how I've arrived at this price. So I want to take you through how I arrived at this calculation. So, number of working days in a year. 52 weeks in a year, 5 working days, Monday to Friday. 52 times 5 gives me 260. Divide that by 12 to get the number of working days in a month. I'm going with 22. I'm sure if your accountant looked at this, you'd probably get the figure down to the last 10 decimal places just to be super accurate. I just like round numbers. Round numbers work much better for me. DevScope portal cost, I'm expressing it in pounds, obviously GDP. So £266, 67 pence. Okay. Now, when I spoke to DevScope, they said this is what you need to buy, and it's going to cost you this price. So here's the prices here. So $13.72 for the Azure database, $15.22 per month for Azure Blob Storage, 2 app services, $102.29, and the price there is for the Microsoft Azure Embedded Power BI service. Yeah, I do trip over some of these terms sometimes. £165 per month. It's 220 hours. Where did I get that from? 22 working days per month, 10 days per day, 10 hours per day. What can I say? It's a real person here. Okay, so 22 times 10 gives 220 hours. Okay, now, this is to remind me to show you the calculator, because you're still probably going, aye, right, I don't believe you. So let's look at the Azure calculator. You may not be aware of this, but Microsoft make this wonderful, fantastic calculator available. And oh, look, as you can see, the figure I showed you, 1372, just happens to be for the Azure SQL database. And I went to DevScope and said, well, what do we need to buy? And this is what they told me you need to buy. Okay, and I will give you URLs for this particular quotation. That will be part of the email that's sent out because actually 4 of them in total. So as you can see, this is exactly where I got my prices from. I haven't made these up. Obviously, these are estimates and they can vary depending on where things are. And if you want to change them, you're more than welcome. Use my estimates as a basis to decide if the solution you require meets your needs, okay? So I have shown you the calculator, so let's get back to the slideshow. So I'll just minimize that. Back to the slideshow, back to the current slide. Oh, you show them the calculator. That's a subtle reminder to me. Hey, stupid, make sure you show it to them. Okay, welcome back to the presentation. So how did I arrive at the prices? This is exactly what I did. I took each individual price and I just added it up. Okay, and that's how I arrived at £6,848.26 for a total yearly estimate for a Power BI E1 Azure embedded SKU with only 220 hours usage. Okay, and the URL will send them out so you can have a look at them. You do require 1 Power BI Pro license per month. Obviously, that's in order to be able to actually publish reports to the Power BI app service, okay, to powerbi.com. And the same one with A2, and that's where I got that figure. Same with A3. And the same with A4. The A4, I should point out, is equivalent of the lowest, same as the premium P1 SKU. It's not 45, because do you need that service running 24/7, 365? Or would 9 to 5 suit you much better? Would Monday to Friday 9 to 5 be easier for you? Maybe you need to slightly different, maybe you need something slightly different. You can use my figures as a basis for a calculation that suits you. Because for me, no longer was about, just Microsoft's approach. Because when I approached it, either my clients or my board, they're going like, why should we even consider this? It's just completely out of our budget. I'm going to think, well, actually, there is a different approach that could work for my clients, could work for my the SMEs I'm working with. And I was like, wow, yeah, fantastic. Interesting. Now, too long, didn't listen, been checking your Twitter feed, 3 people have phoned you, you've had a conversation on Slack channel about what's going on, and to be perfectly honest, you're probably asleep. So I understand that. Listen, I've read so many blog posts, I understand why this stuff is not exactly exciting or riveting. So what I'm going to do in conclusion, I'm just going to summarize what I've talked about for the last 47 minutes or so. Okay, so free. Why should you consider the free tool? The free tool is fantastic. You can can that to anybody within your company, and chances are, if you give permission, they'll connect to your data sources. We haven't even talked about visualizations. We haven't even thought about the analysis tools are built into this tool for free. You can start to get insights into your data you never dreamed of for free, okay? I could blow people's minds. Anyone that's an analytical mind, I could blow their minds with the possibilities. I could just show them and excite them, okay? Power BI Pro license, I think that's a really good deal. If you've got a very small company, fantastic. License each person with a Power BI Pro, or just the people that need to be able to see it. Thing to remember though is it gets a bit unwieldy, I think, around about 50 to 100 users, because obviously you need to administer that. So if someone leaves your organization, you've got to take that account and then allocate to somebody else. You've also got to remember to administer the security, because anybody that's a Power BI Pro license can publish to the service. So that all needs to be managed. Then the security of the user groups, also the workspaces, needs to be managed. So you've got to factor in how much time has got to be spent by someone just managing this whole thing. Okay, so it's worthwhile considering, but if you're sharing with other people, they also have to have Power BI Pro license. Power BI Embedded. Yeah, the Office 365 one I think can work for certain organizations of a large size, particularly if they have an Office 365 subscription. I can think of one organization we're potentially want to work with, where I was thinking, yeah, they could share the reports internally, and some of the other customers also happen to be Office 365 subscribers as well. So they could invite those other customers from external organizations, invite them into their Azure AD, okay, and they kind of become that. They need to log into that customer's Office portal, but once they're in, they should be able to share those reports with them without having to purchase a Power BI Pro license. So that's a really interesting idea, and I thought, That's a different way of doing it, but be aware, obviously, you're signing up for a 12-month contract and you're signing up for that, just that SKU and nothing else, unfortunately. It's very difficult to move. The Azure embedded option for Power BI, I think it is all sorts. My imagination just running riot because not one size fits all. And that very much feels like you either pick this solution, Power BI Pro, or you pick Premium. But what if it's just too small or too big? This gives you the option to tailor a solution to your specific needs using Microsoft's technologies they've made available. Interesting. Power BI Premium is just awesome and fantastic. I can't tell you how many wonderful things that I see from Power BI saying, you need Premium for that, you need Premium for that, you need Premium for that. So if you got the budget, I have to say it's worthwhile considering. However, if you're prepared to think outside the box, if you're prepared to think differently and maybe do some work, maybe Matt Allington's solution is worthwhile considering. He's not doing anything he shouldn't be doing. He's just taking existing Microsoft technology and mashing it up in a different way, and it's all automated, okay? Nobody has to do anything. And you can decide exactly when it turns on, when it starts, and when it doesn't run, and whatever. It's up to you. It requires a bit of work, nuts and bolts, but I tell you what, somebody in IT will probably go, oh, fantastic, I just love that, let me loose, if you can find the right person. Or maybe you want something just a bit different, something a bit more customizable. Maybe you need that interface because you've got multiple customers, okay? Underneath that, it's been driven by the Azure embedded Power BI SKU. So you decide, you can scale up and down the SKUs as much as you want. So you decide maybe during the day, you run an A3 SKU, at the weekends, out of hours, you run an A1, because who's going to be logging in at 2 in the morning to look at Power BI reports? I mean, seriously, why? But it still makes you look good. So you can even shut it down. Okay. Now, it's cheaper than Premium, but it still allows you to share with customers. Okay. Now, what I like about these solutions is it puts the SME back in the driving seat here. You're now the one in control of the cost. You can start to customize and change things and decide how exactly you want to do things that suits your budget. No longer being driven by Microsoft, they're telling you which way to go. You're now deciding, well, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? Now, let's be honest. I'm a consultant. I work for iAcademy. I don't work for Microsoft. I'm not going to get any profit out of advising you what to do, but I want to have a conversation with you. We want to talk with you. We want to sit down and have a conversation about what suits you specifically. We effectively want to make sure we find a tailored solution that meets your needs. It might not be Power BI, who knows? It might be something else because we're a software agnostic company. But we want to have that conversation to make sure you're aware of all the options, because then we can make sure we create a relationship with you and we can help you find things that meet your needs. Not being told what Microsoft's telling you to do and what you shouldn't or shouldn't do. Okay, I've been yapping for quite a while. Thank you very much for taking the time to come along, either to watch this video or obviously thank you very much to those that are actually attending. I love talking about this, seriously. I mean, I could talk about this in the cows come home. Just ask my colleagues, they're just like bored and thinking, oh God, no, please tell them, just shut up. But I really do enjoy talking about it. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this. There is a feedback form. If you got a few moments, please take some time to fill it out. It'll only take about 30 seconds. Honestly, I don't want to expect very much, but it helps me to develop as a speaker. We're going to move on to questions and answers in a second. I see Jane's ready to roll. I've been Robert French. I love speaking about this, and I'm going to stop now and I'm going to hand over to Jane and she can do the questions and answers. Thank you very much.